Hello, hello, hello. My name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Wednesday, December 11th, and I decided to do a drop in live support group meeting, see how people were doing, getting ready for the holidays. Kind of getting stressful out there. But I also have, far more importantly, a very, very urgent update about Elmiron. And so I've been wanting to start this stream all day, but just things happen. I had things I had to do. Hello, Sherry. Hi, Heidi. Hi, Julianne. Oh, what a day, my friends. What a day. And I have herbal tea. This is not coffee, the herbal tea. And let me tell you, I needed it. So somebody was emailing me and who was that? Hello, Gigi. Hi, Gina. How are you? If I'm looking up here, I'm looking at Facebook. If I'm looking down here, I'm looking at YouTube. Hi, Suzanne. Hi, Lisa. So, my friends, I got to tell you, there's some days when I absolutely hate my job. Yesterday was one of those days because we had a new and, in my opinion, very, very devastating research study released. But in the meantime, while we wait for people to get in here, let us just chat. Here, hold on a second. Okay, so for anybody who's new, my name is Jill Osborne. I'm the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. I'm the longest serving IC support group leader in the United States, getting close to being in the world, not quite. I run the IC network. And my purpose in doing these live national and international support group meetings is to make you so strong, so knowledgeable, so informed that no one can ever mess with you again, my friends. We don't want anybody saying that IC is all in your head. We don't want anybody saying that this is not real. We don't want anybody dismissing you, mistreating you, disrespecting you. We want you to know that there is hope. We want you to carry hope in your heart every single day, right? Hello, Donna. Hi, Libby. You guys are awesome. Hi, Aaron. Hi, John. Yeah, well, man, I still got the headache from hell. We didn't do the support group meeting last Sunday because I woke up with a wicked, wicked, wicked headache. So I hope you guys, hi Deb, I hope you guys are having a good day. I mean, look at this. Christmas is 2 weeks away. It is amazing how quick this time is passing. And I don't know about you, but I am just doing a lot of deep breathing. All right. So normally when I do these support group meetings, I do them in 3 sections. I spend 30 minutes giving you a mini lecture on an important topic. I then spend 2 hours taking your questions. And then usually at the end, we do some sort of free giveaway. Now, if you know me, you know that I'm an incredibly optimistic person. You know that you're never going to come to our website and see sad faces. You're always going to see happy faces. I want you to learn from people who are doing well. Remember, when I was first diagnosed with IC, I was told that I would have pain for the rest of my life. And that couldn't have been farther from the truth because I am now pain free most of the time. Remember, too, that we no longer think of IC as an incurable bladder disease. We think of it more as a pelvic pain syndrome, correct? Right. We have subtypes, and we'll probably get into that at some point in time during this meeting. For those of you who were around a year ago last September, you know that I did a support group meeting, a live support group stream where I was literally crying. And it was when we announced the first research that showed that the only FDA approved medication for IC, Elmiron, had been linked to eye damage. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Elmiron, again, only oral approved medication for IC. It's usually one of the first therapies doctors throw right out front to patients who are struggling with some sort of bladder wall issue, whether you've got genitourinary syndrome of menopause or chemo-induced cystitis or some sort of bladder irritation. The concept of a protective coating makes sense. It makes sense for IC subtype 2 specifically. And the IC world was stunned when In the spring of 2018, the summer of 2018, researchers from the Emory Eye Center in Atlanta uh, sent an urgent letter to the Journal of Urology, in which they suggested that they had discovered a new eye disease. Okay, that was associated exclusively with the use of Elmiron. And so the sequence of events was really, really interesting. The first we heard about it was literally Labor Day 2018. I had gone onto the National Library of Medicine to look for articles to do stories for the IC Network, which is what I do, which is what I did yesterday, which led to this discovery yesterday. I will go on to the National Library of Medicine and look at the latest research. And I found this obscure reference to a letter to the editor to the Journal of Urology. And I don't know, there was just something about the title of it that I thought was odd, and I thought I better go look at that. So I logged on to the Journal of Urology, which is uh, a pretty it is the premier IC research medical journal. And hold on a sec, I've got it right here. Okay. So there was another article in the AUA about IC. And the researchers, the eye doctors at the Emory Eye Institute decided that this would be a good opportunity to educate people about what they're concerned. So this is their original letter. I don't know if you can see this, right? And it was in response to a completely unrelated article. But this is, I want to read this to you. And I hope this sounds okay, guys. If you have any issues with this sound, let me know. Um, hold on a sec. As mentioned by the authors, only two FDA-approved therapies for IC bladder pain syndrome currently exist: oral pentosan polysulfate and intravesical DMSO. We wish to alert readers to a concerning new observation of vision-threatening retinal changes associated with long-term exposure to pentosan polysulfate. We recently reported our findings of retinal pigmentary changes in 6 patients undergoing long-term therapy with pentosan, also known as Elmiron, guys. These patients experienced difficulty reading, trouble adjusting dim lighting. Each patient had received a standard dosage of Elmiron, anywhere from 200 to 400 milligrams a day, for a median duration of 15 years. Examination findings in these patients with this condition are suggestive of injury to the retina and underlying retinal pigment epithelium. Although we have yet to establish a causality, which means why is this happening, the presence of these highly unique retinal findings in this population demonstrates a strong association with long-term pentosan use. These cases were identified during a brief 2-year period at our university-based specialty clinic for acquired and hereditary retinal diseases, where we are accustomed to evaluating rare conditions. After extensive investigations, including molecular testing for hereditary retinal disease, we found these cases to resemble no other retinal disease. Furthermore, we are unable to postulate a pathophysiological mechanism linking IC to these findings themselves. Pending further investigation, it remains unclear whether drug cessation will halt or alter the course of retinal disease. Okay, guys, I'm going to read that again. Pending further investigation, it remains unclear if stopping the medication will halt or alter the course of this retinal disease. Remember that, okay? However, we encourage drug cessation in affected patients. In other words, if you are an IC patient, you've taken Elmiron, if you're noticing anything weird with your eyes, you got to get to the doctor. And if they're finding anything, what they say is stop the medication immediately. Now, so I'm reading this going, holy moly. Oh, this is bad. This is bad. So I went and got the article, the original article published in the spring of 2018 in the Journal of Ophthalmology. Here it is. This is their original study. And it's a report of 6 patients with a unique pigmentary maculopathy, okay, that they believe represents an entirely new disease. An entirely new disease, okay? And now, and some people are misinterpreting this. This is what we call this first study of many studies now. Okay, so this is just the pivotal event. This is the thing which triggered chaos in the IC world. This is a report. It's a case series of 6 patients documenting eye damage. This is not making any statement about population. This is not making any statement about how many patients have this. They're just trying to show the damage that they have seen in these patients, okay? And so I want to show you this. So this was 6 patients, took it on average of 15 years. Important to note, though, that the worst patient in the study only took Elmiron for 6 years and had by far the worst damage to her eyes. So that whole 15-year thing is, you know, you gotta everybody's unique. But I want to show you some of the pictures that they found, right? So again, this is in the original study, and these are sequential pictures over time. So here we have one of the first visualizations of the retina, and you'll see a period of time later, it's gotten substantially bigger. And in this picture, it's much, much bigger, right? And this is an even better one. Look at this, right? Early, mid-range, severe damage, right, over time. And all of these patients had genetic causes excluded. They had proper DNA testing. Nearly all eyes, 10 eyes out of 5 patients showed subtle parafoveal pigmented deposits in the retinal pigment epithelium. Okay. And so the question that was raised was, okay, how can we figure out what caused this? Concept number one is that they had to think about is there any connection between the bladder and the eye? Is there any previous knowledge of any bladder disease causing eye issues? And the answer is no. No, there's no pathophysiological mechanism that connects the bladder and the eyes. So the argument that this could be a long-term issue with IC in general, it doesn't fall through. It doesn't follow. It doesn't make sense. Um, uh, in this group of patients, the only commonality in this group of patients is that they all used Elmiron. So these authors did their due diligence. So what they did is they went into early Elmiron research because, seriously, I've been a support group leader for 26 years. I can tell you the discussion of eye issues with Elmiron have been non-existent up to this point. And let me show you. Hold on a second. Oops. Stay. I have all of the original. These are the original educational pamphlets on Elmiron, where they talk about side effects. Not a single one of them mentions eye issues. However, these researchers at Emory Eye did their due diligence, and they went deep into the early data with Elmiron. And what they found is in an unmasked clinical trial of 2,499 patients who took the drug for up to 4 years, vision and eye-related adverse events were reported. This is back before 1996. Back before 1996. And what they found in that early clinical trial was optic neuritis, amblyopia, and retinal hemorrhage. Okay? So they found other reports of eye damage with Elmiron. The other thing that they say that's kind of disturbing is that it resembles macular degeneration. It resembles pattern dystrophy. It resembles other forms of macular disease, but there are very clear things that they look for. So again, here's the context. You got eye researchers who are telling urologists, hey, you got to look for this. You got to ask for this. And in their letter to the editor last August, it allowed a couple of IC doctors to respond. And what the IC doctors said were, hold on. And I'm getting to it, guys. I got to build the case here. So these were the authors of the original paper, which I think was Rob Moldwin, and who was the other one? Curtis Nickel. Okay, so Robert Moldwin, the author of the IC Survival Guide. So when they had an opportunity to reply to this letter to the editor, I just want to read what they said. Many patients with IC remain on this medication for years and even decades. It is quite unlikely that urologists treating patients with IC would ever have made this association. Even ophthalmologists have difficulty differentiating from other macular disorders. Yet the implications are either frightening if our treatment is causing this condition, or instructive if this condition is a variation of IC. And then, of course, they propose more research. We need more research to determine this. Now, if you followed the IC network, you know that we now have 6 or 7 studies that have been released in the last 18 months. Emory issued a larger study at the American Urology Association. We have a national study, small national study that was published, I think, in the British Journal of Urology. And we had our first population-based study. And the population-based study, it was fascinating. So again, you got to remember, these medical specialists are geeks, right? Man, they love the biology of it. They love solving mysteries. And so when Emory released their paper, an ophthalmologist in California, in Oakland, at Kaiser Permanente went, oh, isn't that odd? Maybe we should check that out. And so what they did, an ophthalmology clinic here in California, is they went back into all of their records and they found 140 patients who were using Elmiron and had used it for 5 years or longer. And they were currently using it. And they asked them if they would come in to have their eyes examined. And 91 of them did. And out of the 91 of them who did, 24% had eye damage. So that was our first population-based study. Now, the limitation of that study is that they only looked at patients who were currently taking Elmiron. They weren't looking at patients who had stopped taking Elmiron, okay? And they're doing that now. So now we have our first kind of bigger formal clinical study, which is showing, hey, it's not just a couple of patients, it's a sizable population of patients. Now, many of you also know that we also did our own survey, a fairly informal survey, shortly after this paper came out, where we also asked patients to report if patients using Elmiron, if they were experiencing any eye issues. And you know what? Let me just go there right now, and I can give you real-time data. So hold on a sec. Let me see if it'll let me log in. I think we have 1,500 patients who have participated in our own Elmiron eye issue. Hold on. Asked to send me a code. Oh, 437. All right, hold on a second. 437. Streaming. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Alrighty then. So let me go to, here it is. So we have 1,604 patients who have completed our Elmiron eye survey. 1,604. And let me, and I published this data. This is the data that was presented to the FDA to get a label change for eye examinations. 53 to 54% of the patients, 53.87% of the patients filling out our survey report retinal disease. 53%, my friends. Now, granted, that's informal and that doesn't exclude genetics and all that sort of stuff. But again, that makes that and the Oakland Kaiser data shows that it's not just a few people, it's a fairly significant number of people. So, okay. Oh, this is so hard. I have to pull my hair. It's so hard to talk about. Okay. So let me tell you what happened yesterday. I was working on another newsletter for our Elmiron people, and I thought, oh, well, I better go over to the National Library of Medicine and see if we have a new study. And damn it, we have a new study. Only it's different. It's a case study of a patient, one single patient, done by Harvard Medical School. Impeccable, impeccable source. Here it is. It's a little 4-page. It's a little 4-page article. So, this ophthalmologist at Harvard had a patient, an IC patient, who first came to her clinic when she was 62 years old. And the patient had complained of blurry vision in her left eye, difficulty seeing at night for the previous year. They did a proper workup. There was no family history of retinal disease. And their examination suggested that they thought, since they couldn't connect her eye issues with anything else, now remember, this was 8 years ago, right? They thought it was a toxic retinopathy. They thought that she'd been exposed to something toxic that had damaged her eyes. But when they asked her about it, they could not find any toxic exposures. She returned to the clinic at the age of 67, 6 years later, with worsening vision. And they found that she had a significantly worse damage to both of her eyes at this point in time, as well as changes in the pigment of her retina and things like that. Again, they ruled out all of the genetic diseases. They could come up with no explanation for this woman's worsening eyesight. They sent her home. 2 years later, she was back. And her eyesight was especially bad. So by this time, she's 69. So they'd seen her 8 years. And again, they tried to rule everything out. And they couldn't find any condition that correlated with this eye damage that this was experiencing. But then Emory released their data last year. And this doctor at Harvard remembered this patient and looked at her file again. She had IC. She had used Elmiron for 18 years. Low dose, 200 milligrams a day. And so let me show you the pictures here. Okay. So I want you to see the top row is year 1. The top row is the middle appointment, and the bottom row is the last appointment, right? So you can see the first year, we've got some clear changes in the retina, right? And again, they thought it was a toxic exposure. Middle appointment, you can see dramatic worsening of both of these symptoms. Latest appointment, look at this, it's almost a solid mass. And the interesting, I think the really interesting picture here is this one. This is what do they call this? Serial optical coherence tomography imaging, where it's like a three-dimensional image of the retina, okay? And so first appointment, second appointment, third appointment, right? First, second, third. And you can see the cells in her retina changing colors, right? Okay, whoever you are, I'm not going to answer the phone. Hold on. Yep. Okay. So again, here you've got this ophthalmologist at Harvard who's got this very, very stubborn patient. No explanation for why her eyesight has gotten progressively worse, severely damaged. And then when this study came out from Emory, he pulled up a record and saw that she had taken Elmiron. And when they went in and looked at it again, they confirmed that they believe that her eye damage is clearly associated with Elmiron, pigmentary maculopathy, just like all of the other studies. The findings are virtually identical. Here's the problem. She stopped using Elmiron at year 2. So 1 year after that first appointment, she stopped using it. And yet, what happened? Her eye damage worsened. Her eye damage worsened over time, even though she was no longer taking the medicine. And they compared this to another drug that does the same thing. It's Plaquenil. Plaquenil, I think it's called fluoroquinolone, something like that. That has been proven to cause progressive eye damage even after you stop the medication. So the authors here from Harvard specifically bring up that point, and they compare this to the Plaquenil situation. And they, of course, end this with an urgent cry that patients using Elmiron who are experiencing eye issues get to an eye doctor immediately and ideally stop the medication. Can we say shitstorm? I'm reading this yesterday going, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. This is devastating. Now, granted, it's a case study. So I emailed everybody. I emailed my medical board. I emailed Dr. Jane at Emory. I asked for their feedback, and here's the issue. Dr. Jane at Emory said it's absolutely real and deeply concerning. And they now, thanks to many of you who we referred to Dr. Jane, are just finishing a 1-year study to look and see if things progress. This is a single case study. We clearly need more research. We clearly need more research to see if this is happening. Yeah, exactly, Donna. That's exactly what I'm saying. So, this presents, in my opinion, a really moral dilemma for me personally, right? Okay, because I don't want to scare anybody. And there are people who would say, you shouldn't say anything until multiple research studies confirm this data. And yet, if we wait 2 years for those research studies and it turns out to be true, a lot of you are going to say, why the hell didn't you tell us this in the first place so we could have gotten off of it sooner, right? Right? And the reason why I broke this story in the first place is it's called informed consent, my friends. It's called informed consent. You, as the patient, need to understand the risks of therapy. And if, I mean, I know that pain creates desperation because I was desperate my first year. But ultimately, in the end, it requires a thoughtful consideration of the pros and cons of therapy. I have now asked the AUA IC committee to move Elmiron from step 2 to step 4 or step 5 as a treatment option. In my opinion, it should not be a first-line therapy for IC anymore because the data is accumulating and it's accumulating quickly. Shauna says, what specifically should I be asking my eye doctor to test for? Shauna, if you come on over to our website, which is icnetwork.org, icnetwork.org, right on the front page, I have a link to the article that talks about all the testing that was done, as well as specific links to the journal articles. You can print that out. You can give that to your doctor. They can go into the studies and they can see the exact testing that was done. Very, very intensive, comprehensive retinal studies. I hate doing this. I hate it. But damn it, you're entitled to know this. I think you informed consent matters here. And if you have to choose between a medication which can cause, let's just say, a heart issue versus a medication which could potentially lead to blindness, wouldn't you want to know both factors? Right? Holy hell. This is what I was saying yesterday. You should have heard me yesterday. I was sitting here crying. I was alternating between crying and rage, going, how do we talk about this? How do we talk about this? So this is what I want you to know. I want you to be informed. You're going to know about this before your doctor, because I can guarantee you that your doctor, your urologist, is not reading ophthalmology journals, right? So on our website, in our right in the first blog, I update everything. I have got links to every study. You need to take that to your doctor, to your urologist, and say, hey, the game is changing now. This isn't just 6 patients at Emory. We have our first population-based study. They're saying 24%. And now we have our first case study, which shows that at least in one patient, it progressed over time after they stopped the medication. And remember, what did Dr. James say in this first article? What did he say? Hold on a sec. What? That's the wrong one. Let me get here. It remains unclear whether stopping the drug will halt or alter the course of this retinal disease. That's what he said in the summer of 2018. And guess what, my friends? Harvard Medical School now has the first case of a patient whose disease progressed after they stopped the medication. So I'm so angry. I am so angry. I'm furious on your behalf. And I'm furious because the company knew eye issues were happening in the first big clinical trial. And yet they didn't aggressively talk about it. The only place you found a discussion of eye issues, and I think I have it here. Hold on. It's on the product information sheet. You know the big sheet with the little tiny letters? It's the last side effect. Not a lot of people read that. And in my opinion, when you look at these patient education materials like this, which was an early Elmiron patient education material, and you look at the side effects that they talk about in this, uh, the most common side effects are hair loss, diarrhea, nausea, blood and stool, headache, rash, upset stomach, abnormal liver test, dizziness, bruising, hair loss. Yeah, no mention of eye issues here. And they knew it was happening. I don't know. I don't know what they could have done differently. I think they could have partnered with a urologist, asking, probing about eye issues. They could have referred patients having eye issues to ophthalmologists. I seriously doubt if they understood the severity of what was happening back then, because this appears to be the most associated with using it for a long period of time. But again, remember, in that first case study, the patient who only took it for 6 years had the worst damage. And in our own survey of 1,600 patients, we have patients reporting changes in eye issues in their first year of using Elmiron. So I'm beside myself with anger about this whole situation. And I'm so deeply, deeply sorry for those of you who have taken Elmiron, who are having eye issues. And as Sherry says, we need more studies. A lot more studies are currently happening right now anyway. Um, and remember too, it's not everyone, it's just a subset of patients. But people, and the problem, I got a letter from Robert Evans in response to this too, where he thanked me for sending him the article. And he said, one of our challenges, Jill, is that many patients are just do so well on Elmiron, they're terrified to go off of Elmiron. And that's a discussion you have to have with your doctor. Remember what Elmiron does. Elmiron provides a bladder coating effect. It's the equivalent of a chemical Band-Aid. Now, interestingly, at the Essex Society meeting, the European Society for the Study of IC had their big annual meeting last weekend. And in one of their presentations talked specifically about the bladder wall, and they were trying to identify which was the most important ingredient to the health of the bladder wall, and the answer was chondroitin. Chondroitin. And we know in Europe and in Canada, we have had a bladder installation based using chondroitin called Uracyst for decades. And we also know that some of the best supplements out there that have been used for years use a combination of chondroitin and hyaluronate for a bladder coating effect. And we can also argue very, very successfully that rather than taking any of these medications by mouth, specifically Elmiron, when you take a medication by mouth, it passes through your entire body. It gets into your bloodstream. It ends up in your kidneys. It goes through your urine into your bladder where it causes issues. But clearly, in this case, there is something in Elmiron that is also accumulating in the eye or triggering some sort of eye issue, right? Um, so a far more effective way of using a bladder coating is not as an oral medication, but putting it directly in the bladder, When you take Elmiron by mouth, 92 to 93% of it's destroyed by digestion anyway. And so it's called the bioavailability. So really only 5%, some doctors argue less than 5% actually is capable of performing its job as a chemical band-aid. And that's why Elmiron is challenging, because you have to take a lot of it over time for it to build up as a coating, because its bioavailability is so poor. In contrast, if you put it directly in the bladder in the form of a bladder installation, 100% of the medication arrives in the bladder. And of course, you're going to pee it out eventually. You hold your installation for 20, 30 minutes, and you're going to pee it out. But many would argue that bladder installations are far safer. Just like a topical estrogen is safer than, say, taking an estrogen by mouth, where it's been linked to breast cancer and uterine cancer and stuff like that. So you could try a bladder installation as a possibility, or you could try some of the supplements as a possibility. So again, I can guarantee you that 99.9% of the urologists out there have no clue about this new case study. You got to read the ophthalmology journals or the National Library of Medicine. And the odds are they don't have the time to do that. So you're getting very fresh new news. And you can find the links for everything over on our website, icnetwork.org. Oops, hold on. icnetwork.org. And I've got all the relevant links. I even have a PDF. I haven't linked it yet. I linked it on my Facebook page last night. I've got a flyer you can print out to give to your doctor if the blog printout doesn't work so well. Donna says, what is it in the Elmiron that's causing the eye issues? Nobody knows. Linda says, I stopped taking Elmiron. My urologist was very rude, saying, throwing his arms in the air, and said, I don't put much faith in YouTube, so you can do what you want. He doesn't have to put faith in YouTube. He's got to put his faith in the research journals, print out the research, print out the article with the links to the research, and should be enough. Donna says, why has the company acknowledged this? What the hell are they waiting for? Profits? It's a really good question. Why hasn't the company acknowledged this publicly? I am not aware of the company acknowledging this at all. I can tell you that Elmiron was just approved, I think, in Scotland as a new therapy for IC, and I do not believe they considered the eye data. At least I asked. I didn't get an answer. And so again, this is a situation where at a minimum, we as a patient community have to work together. I'm going to redo my FDA petition with all the new data, and again demand labeling changes for Elmiron that are not asking for Elmiron to be removed from the market. It helps a ton of people, but to at least encourage patients to have an annual eye examination so that if there are any signs of eye changes, they can catch it early before severe damage occurs. And I think you guys would agree with that, right? All right. So you guys just here, you guys are having a big giant discussion on Facebook. Power to you, hun. Power to you guys. Just know I can't scroll back, and so I'm only seeing a part of them. So if you asked a question, please ask it again. John says, Jill, better to err on the side of caution. And yes, yeah. Vicky says she took Elmiron for 20 years. Had it not been for the cost with her insurance company, she would still be taking it. She's glad she's not using it. She's been having eye exams each year, and so far they found nothing. So that's awesome. Again, we don't know why it's happening. They don't know why it's happening. They're going to need some donated eyes, to be quite honest, to really, I think, look at stuff in a very, I mean, I don't know how they would replicate this. Ruth says she's pissed and scared. That's what oh my God, Ruth, that's why I didn't want to do this, but I'm torn. I think everybody has the right to know this. And worse, I think if a year from now more research studies continue to find this, y'all are going to be angry at me for saying, "Well, why the hell didn't you tell me a year ago when I could have stopped it?" I just think that you should be able to make the decisions with the information to date. And some people are probably going to be angry at me for talking about it, but I would be outraged if I was taking a medication that could trigger something that could lead to blindness and nobody told me. And I don't think information should be hidden from you. So I'm not saying to stop it. I'm saying go have an eye examination. If your eye examination is fine, then you're good. If your eye examination is showing anything weird, then yeah, then that's a good reason to stop it. And then you've got to have a discussion with your doctor about other therapies that you can do. You can try the supplements, you can try the bladder installations, but remember too, my friends, seriously, okay, so like one of the most memorable cases I ever worked with years ago. Sorry, the lighting is weird and the sun is going down, and so things are weird. Is that better? Okay. I remember I had an elderly lady give me a phone call, and she was crying because she'd run out of money. She had put her entire life savings, $50,000, into Elmiron over a period of 20 years. And I asked her, I said, "Did it help you?" And she goes, "No, never." And I said, "Why did you keep taking it?" And she said, "Because there wasn't anything else for me to take. There wasn't anything else for me to take." And now, my friends, we have subtyping, right? We have subtypes. We've got number one, Hunter's lesions. Number two, bladder wall driven. Number three, pelvic floor driven. Number four, pudendal neuralgia nerve driven. Number five, central sensitization. If she didn't respond to Elmiron, and what do we know? A one treatment fits all approach doesn't work. Does not work. We know that. We know that. And the odds are in her case, it probably wasn't from her bladder in the first place. She could have had a fibroid tumor pushing on her bladder. She could have had pelvic floor dysfunction. She could have had endometriosis. She could have had a Tarlov cyst. She could have had a lot of stuff that could have been triggering all these symptoms of IC. And every single one of those pills of Elmiron would have been a waste of money for her. That's why being diagnosed with IC in 2019 is kind of spectacular compared to what it was like when I was diagnosed, 20, 25 years ago. Because back then we didn't understand the subtypes. Back then, everybody said it was an incurable bladder disease. Today, we know that's not the truth. We know that for some people, IC begins after muscle injury. Better yet, we know when muscles are treated correctly, those patients can be cured. We know that some patients have a neurological injury. We know some patients do have bladder wall injuries because the bladder, like any other part of the body, can be hurt. And it's usually hurt through some sort of chemical exposure, like chemotherapy or radiation. Although I think radiation damages blood vessels more than the bladder wall, if I remember correctly. But chemotherapy would damage the bladder wall itself. We know some medications, some chemicals can damage the bladder wall, like ketamine. And some antibiotics are very, very strong, and they too can damage the bladder wall. And that's the context in which something like Elmiron makes sense. Or if you got estrogen atrophy, where your bladder wall, your protective coating is super thin, then using something that can reinforce that coating makes complete sense. There is a place for Elmiron, but for God's sake, people need to understand the risks. Nicole says, "I'm currently home resting after recent bladder surgery, and I'm not sure how my surgeon is going to approach the follow-up. Good luck, hun." Courtney says, "Bladder installations with Elmiron? Yeah, they've done rescue installations with Elmiron and lidocaine, or heparin and lidocaine, for a decade or more." Libby says, what about the people overseas that are on Elmiron? Well, hopefully we can educate them so that they can take this information to their doctors. Hi, Molly. Hi, Beth. Sherry says, Dave's original doctor told him they were seeing other side effects too and recommended he wean off. It's gone from 800 per day to 400 a day, and he just can't quit. Like Jill said, people are afraid to come off the Elmiron. You have to wean yourself off because if it is actually helping rebuilding the drug in your system takes too long. That's a really, really good point, Sherry. At the 2006 San Diego IC conference, Dr. Lowell Parsons, the inventor of Elmiron, I was asked a question by a patient, will I have to take Elmiron for the rest of my life? And he said, no. What you have to do is figure out if it's helping you or not. How do you do that? He said, you slowly reduce the dose. So if you take 3 a day, he said, take 2 a day for a week. See if your symptoms change. If your symptoms don't get worse, then go down to 1 a day. If your symptoms do not get worse, you can stop it. And if your symptoms do not get worse, then the Elmiron has done its job or the Elmiron was never helping. Whereas if you reduce the dose and you feel that your symptoms are recurring, then you know that potentially a bladder coating is helping you. Now, what some patients do is they will do a one-for-one swap. So Dr. Theoharides, the doctor who invented Cysto Protect, which had been the top supplement for many years, what he was at the same conference, they were on the stage at the same time, and they talked about transitioning. So what Dr. Theoharides suggested is, as you reduce your Elmiron dose, add a dose of Cysto Protect. So if you were doing 3 Elmiron a day, what he said is do 2 Elmiron and add 1 Cysto Protect to replace it. And then you just do a gradual reverse and see how you do. And that's what many, 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 many patients have done in the last 20 years. That's how they've made that transition. Now, also for those of you who know, for former Cysto Protect users, Cysto Protect did go off the market this year. It is now coming back on the market because it has been reformulated. They were using an ingredient called titanium dioxide in the capsule. It's generated a cancer alert, cancer warning, which pretty much destroyed the brand last May. They have reformulated it, and I think it's on the way to us now. And so hopefully we'll have it by the end of the year. This is not coffee. This is herbal tea, just so you know. Hello, Liz from Ontario, Canada. Lou says, is Elmiron the same as amitriptyline? Absolutely not. No, 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 no. Amitriptyline is a low-dose antidepressant that over time calms nerves down. Elmiron is a bladder coating. They do not work in the same way at all. Elmiron accumulates on the bladder wall. Amitriptyline acts on your nerves. No comparison. Victoria says, I was on Elmiron for 15 years and can no longer drive at night. My eyes are extremely sensitive to light. So the question is why? And hopefully, Victoria, you've been to the eye doctor and you've showed them the article. It could be some genetics involved, but it could also be the Elmiron side effect. Molly says, I tried to talk to Bladder Health UK over on Instagram and it was like talking to a brick. They are pushing and promoting. Girl, I did too. I immediately sent them an email or a message. I think it was on Twitter actually, asking if they'd looked at the eye issue and I got nothing back in return. It all depends upon if the company is a sponsor, it would be very hard to not toe the line. Let's go look at their website. Bladder Health UK is the European equivalent of the IC group, and I am just curious. They have a lot of corporate sponsors. I don't know if any of these are the Elmiron in Europe, though. I don't know. I mean, we all have corporate sponsors. I've got corporate sponsors too. So I don't know. Honestly, I just, the patient always comes first. I have no problem contradicting a sponsor in any way. I don't let them buy my opinion in any way. Gigi says the last time I saw my eye doctor, she said I had a tiny bit of macular degeneration. Assumed it was hereditary because your mom had it, so it could certainly be hereditary. Yes, there are tests to determine DNA tests that can be done to determine if it is indeed hereditary. Sean says informed is forewarned. Thank you, Sean. Exactly. That's my perspective. John John Lee says some people are predisposed to retinal problems, and Elmiron could be a trigger. I mean, it could be. I mean, I think one of the things that's very interesting about it is how it literally adds color to the retinal cells. That it's changing the retinal cell, pigmentary maculopathy. The retinal cell colors are changing, and when that color changes, apparently it becomes dysfunctional. Remember, let's look at this picture again. I think that this is important. So this is of this patient who had progressive disease. So this is a picture from her first appointment. This is a picture from her appointment 6 years later, and this is a picture from her appointment 8 years later. And they're calling these, what do they call these? Um, bilateral hyperreflective nodular deposits at the level of the retinal pigment epithelium, in addition to disruption and loss of RPE and photoreceptors, and then also bilateral progressive fovea involving atrophy of the RPE. Outer retinal tubulations were also present, whatever that is. I mean, I know bladders, I don't know eyes. So all right. And you can see the sun's going down and my light is kind of limited here. So sorry for the lighting. It's weird. Heidi says, do we sell guided imagery for pelvic pain at the IC network? Yeah, we do, but actually it's free now. If you're talking about the Beaumont Health DVDs, they're free. And I think in our store, I have a link to where you can just download it. But yeah, we still do have CDs. But if you wanted to download an e-version, you could. Libby says, I don't see how this can be legal. Again, when you think about all the side effects, hair loss. Okay, would a medication, would you get scared of a medication that could help your bladder knowing you could lose your hair? And the answer, some people are like, it's only hair, it's fine. But then if somebody said, well, but it could cause blindness, would you say it's fine? Maybe not. And that might be why they didn't. I mean, again, I have no direct evidence as to why what happened. I can only guess here. So this is just a guess. But I can assume, I think it's safe to assume that they thought it might scare people away from the medication if they talked about it more. Maybe. Maybe. Sherry says, do I know Dr. Binder at the VA hospital in Tampa? I don't know him personally. I don't. Dottie says, I've had normal eye exams every year. When I heard about the first study, I saw an ophthalmologist who did the kind of in-depth tests that showed that you had damage. Your regular eye exam might not show the damage. Very true. So, for those of you who have been online for a while, you know that attorneys are now circling, and you're starting to see ads pop up from a lot of different law firms around the country who are trying to get patients to sign up for possible class action lawsuits. Um, is it going to happen? Probably at some point in time. I mean, it depends. It just depends on all the data. It's not going to be a fast process, but I think we're going to probably see legal action in the far future at some point in time. The first attorney that contacted me um, contacted me literally a couple of days after we first released this a year ago because his wife has IC and took Elmiron. His name is Michael Jansen, and he is a tort attorney. And in a mass tort claim, as compared to a class action claim, um, and he explains it on a website he built. Uh, the claimants usually get more money as compared to the attorneys. And so elmironeyedisease.com is where you can read a little bit about this. The reason why I mention this is because they are doing their own mini study, and you can participate in that study. It's a survey. And I think that if you wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about that, you can go over to elmironeyedisease.com and give them a phone call. I'm going to say that I have been working with him now for a year and a half for free, absolutely, 100%, because his wife has IC. But when he started pulling it together and wanted to ask for patients to participate in the study, I did ask for payment for that. And so he has paid me to promote his study. Full disclosure. That said, again, he's the only attorney that I've consistently just talked with over a year. In fact, I called him after the study came out and shared it with him. I think that his heart's in the right place because his wife is an IC patient and who used Elmiron. And that's exactly why he got more involved. So I think if you want to know a little bit more about that, go on over to elmironeyedisease.com and check it out. Gigi says, can it cause cataracts? I would remember to my friend since I had surgery. I don't believe so. I don't think that they saw changes in the lens of the eyes. It's really the retina. Libby says, please have your eyes mapped. Find an ophthalmologist who does topography. That's very important. Very important, especially guys, if you have damage, you got to start documenting that damage over time. And you want to save everything. You want to have these tests every year so that you can show the physical damage that's happening, so that you can make a case for your place in any class action lawsuit or any mass tort lawsuit. So this is not the time to hide from the doctor. This is the time to go to the doctor and start developing some data. Guys, this is like doing a voiding diary. You know, one of the reasons why doing voiding diaries is so important is you keep adding them to your medical file. Every time you go to the doctor, do a 2 to 3 day voiding diary, because if you eventually apply for Social Security, that voiding diary is good evidence that you can use to justify that you have a disability. The same is true for these eye tests. The same is true for these eye tests. Their documentation. So once a year, once every 2 years, have it, save it, collect it, because it's proof. It's hard data that your eyes have changed. Mary Jo said that she made the choice to go off of Elmiron as soon as she heard about the eye trouble. I got to say I would have done exactly the same thing as a patient. I don't know. I mean, Elmiron was approved in 1996. I was a support group leader then. You guys remember I have a degree in pharmacology, drug development, and there was just something about Elmiron back then that bothered me, and so I never took it. I just opted out of it. Molly says she had her cysto on November 27th. Still suffering, yet the urologist found nothing. Well, I mean, so did you have a flare from the cysto itself, or are you talking about the suffering before you had the cysto? Courtney says my doctor was trying to push Elmiron after he pushed Lupron. Lupron ruined my life. I found an amazing urologist. He said he doesn't use it either. Yeah. Ruth says, is it dangerous to just stop? That's what I've done. Hun, call your doctor. Call your doctor. I mean, Elmiron does not create a tolerance, like other medications. But ultimately, in the end, listen, You shouldn't be making a decision based upon what you read about online. Man, you gotta, and for me, talk to your doctor about it. You gotta talk to your doctor about it. See what your doctor says. Mary Jo says, I take astaxanthin for nerve pain, and your IC is very little, if ever, bothersome, and your PFD is gone. Mary Jo, that's fantastic. At the Essex Society meeting this weekend, they really talked about IC, and I love the fact that they were focusing on IC as a sensory disorder in some patients, which means nerve, how the skin, how the nerves respond with sensations. Like, as an example, my bladder is completely normal. Completely normal. You did a hydrodistension 2 years ago? Absolutely normal. And yet, if you put 200 cc's of fluid in my bladder, I got to pee right away, even though I have a big bladder capacity. And that's because my nerves are more sensitive. Sensitive. Here, one sec. Hold on. Thank you. All right, hold on. There we go. Cheryl says, I had a hydrodistension with injections of my own plasma, which seemed to help my bladder. Seems to help. My bladder only holds 300 cc's after hydro. Have blood relations. So you're doing platelet rich plasma. Is that right? Yeah. Sherry, I agree with you. But ultimately, in the end, patients have to talk with their doctors and explore other options. Again, if you're IC subtype 2 bladder wall driven, then using a bladder coating makes sense. You just might need to switch to something else. All right, the lights are getting real weird. Hold on. I need more light. The sun is setting here in California. Hold on. Oh my God. Is that better? Okay, that might be a little bit better. All right. Oh. Hold on. Is that better? All right. I don't know why it's glaring the way it is. Sorry about that, guys. And I don't know what I can do about that. Is that better? No? Sorry. Okay. Oh, it is. No, come on. Oh my God. Here, one sec. I got to try something. Hold on. I think I can fix this with a piece of tissue paper. Let's try. That better? Ah, darn it. Sorry, guys. Stay. Okay. Yeah, that's a little bit better. All right. I can live with that. Oh my God. Sorry. Okay. Maybe if I back up. Okay. Let us keep going. Victoria says, I've been to the eye doctor and I believe it was caused by the Elmiron. I stopped taking it 5 years ago and your eyes have not gotten better. I'm so sorry, hun. Hello, Tiffany. Tiffany's here for the first time. Yeah, welcome. Welcome. You are not alone, my friend. You are not alone. All right. Now, seriously, guys, this is this is making me crazy. I got to fix this. Hold on a sec. Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on. See, I got these fancy lights. Oh, is that better? Oh, maybe that's better. Ooh, okay. Okay. That might have fixed the problem. Sorry. I normally don't film at night and I need a better light. Okay, I can live with that. Please. Okay, sorry. Oh my God. Okay. I need to pay a buck every time I say sorry because there's nothing to be sorry about. It's just life. Gina says, do we need to see an ophthalmologist or an optometrist? You need to see an ophthalmologist. It's not about getting your eyes tested for glasses. It's about having retinal stuff done. Okay. Carol says, I've been reading about oxalate poisoning. Can you comment on oxalates in the diet with respect to bladder pain? Well, I mean, so oxalates are byproduct. Oxalates are crystal that accumulates in certain foods. So foods that are high in oxalates are going to be things like chocolate and berries and spinach. We have known for decades now that patients with vulvodynia are often exquisitely sensitive to foods high in oxalates. And that also is true for some, but not all IC patients. That there are some patients who notice their bladder gets more irritated if they do high oxalate foods. So what you can do is you're just going to have to do an elimination diet and see how you do. If you have if you have more sensitivity after you eat spinach, or after you eat berries, then we can logically say that perhaps you're sensitive to oxalates. It's just trial and error. It's I don't think toxicity is the right word. I think it's more related to the chemical structure of it, the fact that it's a sharp crystal and a sharp crystal is irritating, right? It's irritating. Hey guys, let's take a bio break. 2 minutes. If you need to, go to the bathroom because that's what I'm going to do. I'll be right back. Alrighty. I checked the beef stew on the stove. It is doing good. It's raining here. Perfect night for something like that. Icy friendly. All right. Libby says they wanted to make money off of us. This is so infuriating. Yeah, it is. I'm pretty angry about it myself. Oxalates cause kidney stones. That is true. There was a time somebody was saying that one of the barriers with Elmiron is the cost, and that's very, very true. Elmiron used to be very inexpensive. Unfortunately, now it's not. When it went off a patent, the company raised the price because anytime a product goes off a patent, that means that a generic manufacturer can step up and start building it. And so I think the company raised the price to try to get as much money as they could until a generic came out. A generic has been available for Elmiron in Canada and Europe for years. It's made by a company called Swati Spentos in India. It is not approved in the United States because the FDA demanded that they replicate most of the original Elmiron studies to prove that it worked, and that was too cost prohibitive, apparently. That's why we don't have a generic Elmiron, but maybe that's a good thing, right? They're also studying Elmiron for other conditions too, like as I, I think I saw a study about as a preventative for UTI or something yesterday. I don't know. I could be wrong. All right, YouTube. Let's check you out here. So you guys, when I'm looking up, I'm looking at Facebook. When I'm looking down, I'm looking at YouTube. Donna says, my mom used to say, the more informed you are, the better off you are. Absolutely. Hello, Diana from Puerto Rico. Nice to see you. Anybody from Europe on right now? Well, no, they wouldn't be because they're what 9 hours ahead of us, so it's early, early morning for them. We might have and it would be yeah, we might have some people from Australia join. Aaron says, "What are the symptoms one would experience with eye damage over time?" And it's really blurry vision, and difficulty in low light. So moving from dark light to light. You know how? Well, you know how when you walk into a movie theater, you have to stop at it's at the door before you can walk in to wait for your eyes to adjust. That's what changes dramatically. In normal eyes, that might take what 10 seconds, 5 seconds, but for patients with this, it can take much longer, a couple minutes before their eyes adjust. So it's that changes from bright light to low light that are the biggest challenge. Nicole says, I've been in a flare for 4 months. Um, had surgery this past Thursday. I've been getting by since, trying to get back to baseline before heading to work. Hon, I'm so sorry. Do you know what kind of flare you're having? Is it a bladder wall flare or a pelvic floor flare? Do we know? Debbie Weiner says that she has macular degeneration after taking Elmiron for 7 years, but her twin sister does not. Debbie, the assumption is your twin sister has never taken Elmiron. Sunil says she's been on a medication for 10 years. She's scared to stop because she doesn't want the pain to return. What do? Number one, you got to talk to your doctor. And number two, you're going to be looking at other therapies which have a bladder coating effect. So chondroitin-based therapies, the supplements, things like that you could potentially try. Sunil said they checked her eyes. They checked her eyes. Sorry, guys. I'm just so weird right now. My whole face is weird. I'm dealing with this congestion. So it's like I'm congested right here, which is why I keep rubbing it, and I'm congested right here too. So I apologize if I'm touching my face. So Sunil says they checked her out for retinal damage. They found very little and they could not tie it to the Elmiron. Cool. That's good to know. Just be on top of it. If it changes, get tested again. So this is good. So Deborah was on Elmiron for 4 years. She lived a pain-free, normal life, heard about the eye damage, got off of it. She says she was petrified, went to the ophthalmologist. Her retinas are good at this point. Even though she thinks they've been affected, her bladder pain came back, but she's been managing it with CBD pills along with Desert Harvest aloe and the IC diet. Cool, hun. Good. She says she loves the site and our meetings. Good. I like doing the live meetings too. I mean, I think that they're really fun. I just wish that I had better news. I hate doing meetings where I don't have good news. Debbie says her sister took Elmiron for 1 year with no eye damage. So your twins both with IC. One of you took Elmiron for a longer period of time. You did. Your twin didn't. You now have the eye issues. She does not have eye issues. Linda says, does bladder builder or bladder rest have the bladder coating? Yes, they both do. They both have a bladder coating effect. Thank you, Michael. So the bladder coating ingredients are going to be the chondroitin and the hyaluronate. So you're going to find the most effective ones. You're going to find in bladder builder, bladder rest, cysto protect, cysto renew. Desert Harvest aloe also has a bladder coating effect, but I don't remember where aloe scored in the ESSIC meeting. I could look it up. Here, hold on. Hold on. Let me see if I can find that. I have to go to Twitter. If you go to Twitter and you search for hashtag ESSIC2019, ESSIC 2019, rather, and then click latest. It's a fabulous physical therapist in Europe. Her name is Jilly Bond. And she was the one who was tweeting from the meeting. She did a great job, and she now has a video covering the meeting. Obviously, I couldn't get there because I'm caring for elderly parents. But let me see if I can find that slide here real quick. I love that she took pictures of all the slides. Where is it? They talked about the microbiome. I thought that was interesting, that there's no decisive pathogen or absence of benign bacteria found that explains the pathophysiology of IC, but there are microbiome alterations that are correlated with IC. I do not believe that I don't know if they mentioned chronic infection or not in that. 63 species of bacteria have been identified in the urine of healthy people. Women tend to have more lactobacillus and Gardnerella dominant. Men tend to have more Corynebacteria, Staphylococcus, and Streptococcus dominant. Bladder cancer and overactive bladder have completely different biomes. Here it is. I wish I could show you these pictures. Oh, dang it. I forgot to record this. Oh, no. I mean, it's going to record on Amazon, but I normally record it myself. Chondroitin sulfate is localized on the luminal urothelial surface and contributes to bladder protective layer. The gag layer recovers from mild damage within 24 hours. Isn't that interesting? The bladder layer, gag layer, recovers from mild damage within 24 hours. Aaron says, can anybody drink eggnog? I can. Try not to because it's fattening, but yeah, I can. Nicole says, does anybody have trouble with nightshades in your diet? Yeah, some people are nightshade intolerant. I mean, eggplant, things like that. It's fairly rare. We don't hear about it a lot, but it's possible. We all have our different sensitivities. Victoria says, I've had great results from Bladder Builder. Just started it a couple of weeks ago along with Peora. Yeah, baby. I love success stories. Hey, for those of you who are on Bladder Builder um, or Bladder Rest, if you could go over to Amazon, leave some reviews and share your experience, that would be really great. We need more reviews. We need real life stories of how patients are doing, both pro and con. Carolyn says, well, I wish I was vacationing in Europe. Not me. I'm not a traveling girl. I like to be. I like staycations. You know, if I can go to a spa 15 minutes away down the road, that's my perfect vacation. I'm not a flying girl. I don't like it anymore. Lisa says she's having uterus issues. Blood has pooled in your uterus, but you can't spot. My primary care provider found this because she's doggedly kept testing. Interesting. I would think that what they would do is some, I would think that they would have to do like an endoscopy, or where they go in. What do they call it when they treat your uterine lining with electricity and just kind of deactivate it, for lack of a better term. What is that name? It'll come to me. That word. What is that freaking word? Lisa says, how do I submit a nomination for Physical Therapist of the Year? Go over to icawareness.org, icawareness.org, and you can do that right over there. It's part of IC Awareness Month. We are taking nominations. We're to the end of the year for Doctor of the Year, Physical Therapist of the Year, and Nurse of the Year. Got 2 more weeks to nominate your favorite doctors for these awards of the year. They deserve recognition, people. If they're good, we need to know who they are so we can send other patients to them. Lisa, I agree. Lisa says your options were to monitor it for 3 months or to have a DNC with biopsy. At first, I chose to monitor, but have changed my mind. If I have uterine cancer, better to know. Yeah, hun, remember, I had the DNC with biopsy too, and I don't regret it. I think it was the right thing to do. Greg said, I did the microgen test and they found Streptococcus agalacti in my urine. Oh, isn't that interesting? So the question is it pathogenic? I mean, how much did they find, and do they think that could be triggering some of your symptoms? Harley says, I would like to say, God bless you, Jill, for everything you've done for all of us that suffer from this invisible disease. Oh, you're very, very welcome, hun. I'm an IC patient too. So it's not like, it's not like I'm reading this stuff from a purely analytical side, thinking, not thinking about the patient. I'm a patient too. And so I hate to say it, but we need a couple more doctors with IC to speak out and educate other doctors. I believe in peer-to-peer marketing. I think doctors with IC should be educating doctors. I think nurses with IC should be educating nurses. I think physical therapists with pelvic pain should be educating other physical therapists with pelvic pain, et cetera, et cetera. Sue says, you just had the InterStim. Ooh, girl. Ooh. Okay, she just had the inner stem. I think, yeah, the typo demon is alive and well in your post here. I think you said awful day, could not urinate for 4 hours. You had spasms, but everything is good now, and you're heading home. Girl, Sue, you did it. And I hope you played Christmas carols like we talked about last night. We were messaging late last night because she couldn't sleep. It was a long drive for her, and I was working on this whole Elmiron chaos. So Sue, on your way home, I want you to turn the Christmas carols up really, really loud and sing as loud as you can your favorite songs. I used to do this. I used to work in Mendocino County here in California, and it was a long car, 2.5 hour car ride through a very long redwood forest. It was really scary at night, like really scary. These big giant trees right next to the road, and it scared me every single time. And so I just sang as loud as I could every single song I could think of on this long car ride for me. It's through Navarro for anybody who's been on Highway 128. Scared me every time. So, girl, you sing those songs. I've been singing the new Frozen song, "Into the Unknown." You should see me in my car. Into the Unknown. I sing so loud in the car. People are like, "What?" Like, I don't care. It makes me feel good. I love that song. I can't sing it worth beans. I just, yeah, I can't sing it. I can sing the low note part, not the high part, but it's a great song. Sherry says, I just went to my urologist. He did the next gen test, waiting for the results. At least more urologists are realizing their urine culture tests are useless for IC sufferers. Yeah, I agree. Sherry, no, it's not fulguration. It's not, but it's close. It's not fulguration. No, 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 no. A uterine. Angie says the IC community needs to do a campaign to raise awareness for training in the medical field, doctors, nurses, and physical therapists to treat IC. I mean, absolutely, Angie. The problem is we have no money. We have no money. The big pharmaceutical companies, stopped sponsoring IC Awareness Month a decade ago. Or I mean, so normally, like my dream for IC Awareness Month has been to get a poster about IC in every single urology clinic in the nation, if not in the world. And every time I have a new sponsor come on, I pitch it to them. It's like, because I don't, when people say, if they'd like to make a donation to the IC network, I don't just say sure. I say, what do you want to do with it? And so with the pharmaceutical companies who occasionally come a calling, not too many of them do these days because there aren't too many drugs. It's like, what do you want to do with it? And I really, really, completely agree with you, Angie. We need more training. And Hunt, that's one thing that. So Elmiron was invented by Baker Norton. It was then passed to Alza Pharmaceuticals. Alza Pharmaceuticals was fantastic. We owe a debt of gratitude to Alza because they did massive education of doctors and nurses about IC. I mean, yeah, it was promoting Elmiron, but their biological training about the bladder was really unparalleled. And they put tens and tens of thousands of dollars into slideshows and presentations and this and that and handouts. And you know this is you guys know I whipped this out, right? This was one of the old educational things about how Elmiron worked, and the three-dimensional picture of the bladder wall. So tools like this were fantastic. We got nothing now, nothing, nothing. And so um, we have a lot of ideas. We just don't have the money to do it. And that's why with IC Awareness Month, my goal with IC Awareness Month is to give you resources so that you can try to do it in your town. But at the national level, I mean, what we could sponsor, a CME course. I mean, there are things that could be done. It's just they just take money, and it's money we don't have. We just don't have it. Period. Especially this year. Sherry, ablation. That's it. Thank you, Holly. It's ablation. Thank you, Holly. Sue says you should get on Dr. Oz. It'd be interesting. We're going to be doing some very, very professional. We're going to be changing a lot up in 2020. I think I might have a set, better equipment, more videos, more movies. That's the goal for 2020. Websites are dinosaurs now. People don't go to websites very often. Although, please go to my baby, the IC Network, icnetwork.org, which is the largest free archive of IC information in the world, rated #1 by Harvard Medical School. If you're looking for information on IC, please don't start with Facebook. Please go on over to the top website according to Harvard Medical School, icnetwork.org. Okay. But that said, websites are dinosaurs now. People don't really come to websites. They prefer going to video. And so that's what we're doing. You're going to see a lot more streaming. I want to do it every day, to be quite honest. I'd like to stream an hour or two every day. I mean, I think it'd be really interesting. We just need to hire somebody to do my regular work, like answer the phone. And my staff are all really busy. I mean, we're a small team. We've got 4 people. Everybody's working like chickens with their heads cut off right now, myself included. All right. So for anybody who's new, who's just come in, I had the unfortunate job of sharing a new case study on Elmiron. Ophthalmologist at Harvard Medical School has published the first case of a patient whose eye damage appeared to progress significantly and for years after she stopped using Elmiron. This is the article. It appeared last month in the journal. It's a really obscure journal, Ophthalmic Surgery, Lasers, and Imaging Retina. I can promise you, no urologists read this journal. And this is an ophthalmologist who, again, Harvard Medical School, absolutely impeccable, had a patient who first came to her clinic at the age of 62 with blurry vision and difficulty seeing at night, that nighttime vision, which is something that we continue to note. And in that evaluation, they ruled out everything else, including genetics, and they were left with the perspective or thought that perhaps the findings raised suspicion for a toxic etiology, but there was no history of exposure to known retinotoxic agents because this was 7-8 years ago. Okay. The patient came back 6 years later at the age of 67 with worsening vision. And again, a significant atrophy of her retina, significant changes in the color of her retina, and the findings of her retina, cell death in her retina, et cetera, atrophy, et cetera, et cetera. Again, they ruled out genetic testing, any other potential causes. It was a great mystery in this Harvard ophthalmology clinic. They could not figure out why she was progressively getting worse. Sent the patient home. 2 years later, the patient comes back with even worse damage, very, very severe eye damage at that point in time. And we have pictures. So let's just look at these pictures. I think that these are very meaningful pictures. So the top row are the pictures from her first visit. So you can see the beginning of changes of her retina right here. Obviously, you can see right here. The lighter area, significant. Let's see that light area right there. This was from an examination 6 years later, and you can now see a much greater expansion, especially of these black dots here. And look at this. And this left eye, right eye, so this both eyes, right? And then in her final or her last appointment that was in this study, you can see the black spots are merging and creating basically a black lump or a colored lump on her retina. Except lump is not the right word. Lump is not the right word. Changes in coloring of her retina. I think the picture here that's the most meaningful to me is this picture, because this picture represents a three-dimensional look at her retina. Year one, or appointment one, you see mild changes in her retina surface. Year two, you start seeing these black dots, and year three, they're much more frequent. This is 2 years apart. These were called bilateral hyperreflective nodular deposits at the level of the retinal pigment epithelium, in addition to disruption and loss of epithelium and photoreceptors. Uh, okay, there you go. And outer retinal tubulations. What makes her case so incredibly powerful to us is that she had stopped using the Elmiron after the first year. And this was 7 years worth of follow up. And so, what they were able to document is that actually, let me take a step back. Okay, so here they've got this patient and they have no idea why she's getting worse. No clue. And then last year, Dr. Jane released the first paper about this pigmentary maculopathy from Elmiron. And this caught the attention of this doctor at Harvard and Dr. Rachel Huckfeld at Harvard. And so the doctor had a hunch, went back, pulled up her medical records, saw that she was an IC patient, and saw that she had used Elmiron for 18 years at a low dose of 200 milligrams a day. And when she compared her findings, so her findings with, as an example, let's see. So this is from the original article a year ago, okay? Same test, right? This three-dimensional look at the retina, and you see the same black spots that you see in this patient's examination, right? So again, this Dr. Huckfeld, it goes, I wonder if Jane, I don't know if that's her real name, if Jane could have this, because remember, they theorized a retinotoxic agent, a toxic exposure of some type. Pulls it up, compares it to the Emory Elmiron issue, and says, this is it. This appears to match what Emory has found in these IC patients perfectly. And but then what they also discovered is that she had stopped taking the medication after the first year. The reason why she stopped is she did neuromodulation. She did a different therapy. So she decided she self-stopped the Elmiron 1 year after her first appointment. And so what all of these studies show is even though she stopped the medication, her eye damage progressed. And they deliberately compare this to another medication that has done the same thing, called Plaquenil. And Plaquenil is used for fibromyalgia, and Plaquenil is known for eye damage. It's rare eye damage, but when it happens, even if you stop the medication, the damage increases. So the Harvard makes a very strong comparison to the Plaquenil and suggests something similar could be happening And again, so this is from this patient who over time, first appointment, second appointment, third appointment in one eye, first appointment, second, and this is obviously deeply, deeply concerning. So, I mean, I just want to say that I'm not of the mindset to sit on information. I think that you are entitled to know the risk versus benefits. I think that yes, it's a case study, and yes, further research is needed, but we've already had a lot of research produced. Preliminary, I mean, a lot of research for a year. If you go on over to pentosaneYedisease.org, pentosaneYedisease.org, that's a website I built that tracks the research a year ago. I was updating it last night. If you go on over to icnetwork.org, you'll see a blog on the front page, which is an exact copy of it's an exact copy of the Pentosan website, which shows you the research that has been produced to date. And again, I just want to say here that a lot of people have made a really inaccurate assumption. When we look at that first study, Donna says, "Hey, if I could, I would move to California and answer your phones." Donna, seriously? You have no idea. I would, you would be awesome. You would be awesome on the phones. Absolutely. Okay. Hmm. There are phone systems that actually allow you to transfer across the country. We should think about that. Okay, getting back to this. So, you know, um, to sit on this information and hide it from you, in my opinion, would be malpractice on my part, because first and foremost, I'm a support group leader and I'm the national support group leader. And to potentially withhold information that, let's just say, somebody might say, "Hey man, let's just wait a year and see what happens." That's not good enough for me, because what if a year from now, and Dr. Jane said they're coming up on the year mark anyway for their study. Let's say a year from now we have another study which confirms this, if not makes it worse. Some of you are going to come back and say, "Well, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us so that we could make an informed decision about whether we want to continue this medication or not?" And um, I believe that you have the right to informed decision making. And yes, it's a case study, but yes, it's a disturbing case study. And as you ponder your therapies, you have to make a choice, risk versus benefits. I said this a little while ago. I said, now listen, every medication comes with side effects, of the big pharma meds. They do. So you have a choice of taking a medication that, like amitriptyline, where you're going to gain 20 pounds and have dry mouth, that might help calm your nerves down, or you have a medication that might coat your bladder, make you feel better, but could lead to blindness. Which one are you going to choose? I can't answer that question for you, but I can damn well answer that question for me. And I want to be able to read for the rest of my life. So, and interestingly, I also want to say this: when we published our first paper, the very first phone call I got afterward, literally 30 minutes after it went live online, I had a patient call who said, "Oh my God, you just saved me from becoming blind." And I went, "What do you mean?" She said, "We couldn't figure out why my eyesight has gotten worse and worse and worse. But I'm been on Elmiron for years." And she took it back to her doctor, as many of you have, and have discovered that it was indeed pigmentary maculopathy from Elmiron. So she made the choice to stop the medication with the hope that that would stop any eye damage. And let's hope it does. But we have to be prepared for the fact that perhaps for some people, the eye damage could get worse. And I think you have the right to know that. Terrible. I hate this part of the job. And if you disagree with me, I would just ask you to sit in my shoes. Hi, Karen. Thank you, Nanette. Thank you, Victoria. Hi, Donna. Hi, Susan. Katie says, this makes me nervous. I'm 34, took Elmiron for 14 years, stopped a few years ago because I put myself into remission with diet and supplements. I've been saying for years my eyes are getting bad, but chalked it up to having kids. And they said with an eye exam, my prescription wasn't different when I initially saw the eye doctor about 6 years ago, but I've had blurry vision when I go in dark or from looking at my phone for anything else. So, so honestly, hon, Katie, you need to go to our website, print out the blog, and I will make sure to put up I have a fact sheet that I created too. It's just not live. It's live. I just don't have it linked to that article yet. That summarizes all the research today. You can take that to your doctor and have them do the more aggressive retinal testing. You know what I can do is I can actually do that. Here, hold on a sec. I can actually log in and do that right now. Give me a moment. Uh, um, 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 um. Give me a moment. Alrighty, so I have to link my media file, which is right here. Let me just grab the link. Oops. All right. I wish I could screen share so you guys could see this. And let me take a picture of that, which I've done. All right, and now let me go to my post. All right there. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link. All right, download our easy printable fact sheet to share with your physician here. All in capital letters. Let me just put the link on there. There we go. Updated. All right, so now if you go to icnetwork.org and go to this post, right underneath the first paragraph in all capital letters is a link. And all you need to do, and I will post it here on Facebook. Ooh, I almost accidentally pressed enter end live video. Oh, that would have been a mistake. All right, so Facebook, I just clicked it for you. YouTube, I just put it down there for you. There you go. Sherry says, have you thought to take a screenshot of your computer and then show us a picture? I'd have to print it. What I should do is you know what I can do? Hold on. What I can do though is show it to you on my iPad. See, the software that normally does this, because I live stream on YouTube and Facebook, it won't let me screen share on both platforms, and the software keeps breaking. It only lasts about 30 minutes before it breaks. It's called OBS. So I have technical issues right now, which sucks. but it is what it is. Hold on. I see. Okay. Oh, see, you're not even gonna be able to see that. Yeah, see, you can't even see it. That's not even gonna work. Alrighty. All right, guys. Well, listen, this was just a drop-in support group meeting to go over some of this stuff. I think it's time to wind it up. I have dinner waiting on the table. I can smell it, and I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit on the hungry side. So, last call for questions. Last call for questions. You will see me on Sunday, God willing. Cold, cold congestion willing. I will be doing another live support group meeting on Sunday, going through all of this all over again and taking questions. Last call for questions. Last call for questions. All right, my friends. Now listen. The holidays are in 2 weeks. I mean, Christmas is in 2 weeks. Dude, everybody has their own holidays, but here it is. If the holidays are in 2 weeks, this means that our stress levels are going to get higher and higher and higher. And hopefully, I didn't add you stress today, and I apologize if it did. This is a time where you need to use a lot of good self care here. So, what do we say? Number one, um, this is not your fault. You have done nothing wrong. There is no shame. There is no blame in having interstitial cystitis or pelvic pain. You're no different than someone who is hit by a car. And the irony here is if you had a relative hit by a car in front of your house, you would be the first one out the front door. You would be on the ground with them, you would be holding their hand, you would be in the ambulance with them, you would be at the hospital with them every single day, you would bring them home, and you would fix them every meal that you can fix them because you love them. And yet it's so interesting and odd that we in our own mixed up brains think that we don't deserve that same level of love and support. I don't really understand why. I think part of that is just kind of the when you're in pain, you're stressed. When you're stressed, you get anxiety. When you struggle with anxiety, you get a lot of inflammation and immune, it affects your immune system. And then that can lead to some catastrophizing. And then before you know it, your day is filled thinking the worst is the worst. My life is over. My life is over. Your life is not freaking over. You're hurt. You're hurt. Something happened. You are an anatomical mystery to be solved. And what do I say to everybody? Do not, do not, do not go to a new doctor and say you've got interstitial cystitis. That is not what you do because you're going to fall down the rabbit hole of potentially old beliefs. You walk in and you got to be able to talk very clearly about your symptoms. Hey, doc, when I move in a certain direction, I get pain on the left side. Or, hey, doc, you know what? When I have sex, I get this type of pain. Or, doctor, I am peeing every 20 minutes and I don't know why. You have to get them focused on your anatomy. Like you have to be focused on your anatomy. We don't guess anymore. This is not a situation where, think about what used to happen to men and women. You call the doctor with frequency urgency on the phone. The doctor would go, hey, man, sounds like you got an infection. Let me prescribe you antibiotics. Your urine is never even studied. Your urine is never even tested. You don't even see that. You didn't even see the doctor back then. They just filled antibiotics for you. And guess what? The antibiotics might have helped a little bit. They might not have helped. And then that patient, because their symptoms persist, they then say, well, maybe you've got overactive bladder, and they put you on overactive bladder meds. They don't help. You go back to the doctor, and the doctor goes, maybe you've got interstitial cystitis, and they put you on IC meds like Elmiron. Those don't help. And the doctor throws up his hands. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with you. You've exceeded my skill set. And ultimately, in the end, when you look at the American Urology Association guidelines for IC, they're very clear in saying that if you are not responding to therapy, if you are getting worse rather than better, then what do? We revisit the guideline, we revisit the diagnosis. Let's make sure we know what the hell we're treating here. No more guessing. You deserve better than a guess. You need facts now. You need facts. If you're afraid to have somebody look in your bladder, get over it. If you've had pain for 3 to 4 years, you got blood in your urine and you're getting worse, for God's sake, let them look in your bladder. You might be somebody who has a bladder stone floating around in your bladder, cutting your bladder wall, as we had with a patient earlier this year. She was afraid to have a cystoscopy. Her pain got worse. She finally allowed the doctor to look inside of her bladder. Simple test. Found a giant kidney stone, also known as a bladder stone, floating around in her bladder. Stones are very sharp. So wherever it was floating in her bladder, it was cutting her bladder wall. And then the other thing to know about stones, and again, they're very common around the world, is that they're covered with bacteria. So here you've got this stone literally cutting the bladder wall and then introducing bacteria into the bladder wall. And in that patient's case, they removed the bladder stone, her bladder healed, she was cured. Okay? Consider the case of women with fibroid tumors. Many women, if not most women with fibroids, have urinary symptoms. And we had a research study again released earlier this year, or maybe late last year, which showed that when the fibroid was treated correctly, when we got rid of that mass pushing on the bladder, guess what happened? Bladder symptoms improved dramatically in the vast majority of symptoms of these patients. And those patients were technically cured of their bladder symptoms once the fibroid tumor was addressed. So there are a lot of things that we want to try to rule out. And in fact, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Woohoo! We finally got our fall magazine out after a 6-week delay because of all the fires here in California. So this went out over Thanksgiving. The only people who probably don't have it yet are the international customers because it's on the way. That's just slower. And you guys had been asking me to produce a comprehensive list of things to rule out, and I did in this one. And yet, I just found another thing to rule out. I don't remember the name. It's a very rare condition, but it should be ruled out. So the lead story in this magazine, um, first of all, we have a wonderful interview with Dr. Denise Pecht, who is a female urologist in the Atlanta area who uses subtyping in her practice. And she's so nice to actually talk with doctors who love treating and working with pelvic pain patients. Her depth of enthusiasm for this patient community is really rare, and she is a true next generation clinician. A lot of our good doctors are going to be retiring soon, so we're always looking at who's coming up next, who's going to be our next good doctors. She's going to be one of them. In my second article in this magazine is Confusable Conditions. Have you missed something? And this is a long article. How many pages is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages of conditions that you really need to ponder if your symptoms are persisting. Revisit the diagnosis. Have we missed something? Talk about chemocystitis if you had chemotherapy, radiation cystitis if you had radiation. We talk a little bit. First thing I talk about in here is cancer, bladder cancer. There's no connection between IC and cancer. None. Okay, zero, zip, nada. But a lot of us, myself included, cannot get the C word out of our brain. And I remember saying to my doctor, "You have missed something. I have to be dying of cancer with this level of pain." And he's like, "Jill, you don't. You have IC." And I said, "I don't believe you. I think I have cancer. I want you to look." And I demanded exploratory surgery, a laparotomy. And my gynecologist did it. Woke up in the recovery room. "Jill, you're fine. No cancer. You got IC. You got a wounded bladder." Well, actually, now we know it's subtype 5. But it's also important to note that we are definitely seeing more cases of HPV-driven urinary cancers, urethral cancer, bladder cancer from the HPV virus, and that's the next. My generation, we didn't have that as prevalent as it is now, although everybody's at risk for it. Okay, so radiation cystitis, chemocystitis. And then we talk about chemical injury, tioprophenic acid, which is often used by people who have arthritis. That's a medication known to damage the bladder wall. Ketamine cystitis, another medication known to damage the bladder wall. We know that foods can cause a chemical injury of the bladder wall. We know that there can be nerve issues, neurogenic bladder. There can be urinary retention from a blockage. There can be bladder stones. There can be a diverticulum. There can be, hello, my ladies, genitourinary syndrome of menopause because your bladder relies on estrogen to produce that nice, thick, protective coating. That diminishes as we get older and lose estrogen. So your bladder's ability to defend itself changes once you're menopausal. It gets worse. And so, if you've got a dry vulva and a dry vagina, guess what? You probably have a dry urethra and a dry bladder. Okay. I talk about infection in here. Whoops, looks like we just lost Facebook. Bacterial infection, fungal infection, viral infection, prolapse, endometriosis, fibroid tumors, prostate cancer. You name it, it's in here. So if you do not get the IC Optimist, our magazine, please sign up. All right, so it looks like Facebook died. Yep, Facebook died. All right, well, that was kind of a good time anyway. All right, my friends on YouTube, I'm gonna say it's done. We're over. I will see you on Sunday. All right, and maybe sooner. Maybe I'll do another one. We'll see how the week goes. All right. Okay. Bye, Hendria. Bye, Donna. Bye, Lisa. You guys be well. And I know there's some gentlemen in here too. And I want to say goodbye to you guys also. Bye, Greg. There's another one in here too, I'm sure. Okay, guys. See you later.